Is it wrong to try to obey God? Now, the reason I'm asking this question, this may sound like a silly question. Well, what do you mean, is it wrong to try to obey God? Well, of course not. But, just like rebellious children that really do not want to do what their parents tell them to do, I'm wondering if the same thing isn't going on in our religion also. Because over the 30 years of just listening to preachers, my conclusion, television evangelists, radio preachers, my conclusion that I have come to is that it must be wrong to try to obey God. That if you're trying to obey God, it's like sinning or something. You're trying to get saved by works if you try to obey God. And that's why I'm asking the question, is it wrong for you to try to obey God? I mean, just think about some of the stuff that you've heard. Statements like, what must you do to be saved? Nothing. That was a famous television evangelist. Billy Graham used to say that. Now, later he corrected his teaching, but a long time ago he would say things like, what must you do to be saved? Nothing. The conclusion is that it must be wrong to try to obey God, that no one would want to try to obey God. And like I said, that's the conclusion that I have come to over 30 years of just listening to preachers and television evangelists. How many times have you heard the quote, not of works, lest any man should boast? Wouldn't want anybody boasting. Wouldn't want anybody don't anybody try to obey God, because that would be like trying to work your way into salvation. Not of works, lest any man should boast. And they never continue to quote that full scripture. They stop right there as if it ends right there. It goes on to say that we are His workmanship, created unto good works. Oh, you mean we're supposed to be involved in good works? Well, absolutely. And how many times have you heard, you're not saved by works of the law? It's almost as if you're trying to get saved by works of the law. And the conclusion is, well, it must be wrong for me to try to do anything that's right. It must be wrong for me to try to obey God, because I would be trying to get saved by works of the law if I tried to obey God. Now, I don't know about you, but that's the conclusion that I have come to over 20, 30 plus years of listening to religious preachers. That's the conclusion that I have come to that it must be wrong for me to try to obey God. Now, is it wrong to try to obey God? Grace plus nothing. How many times have you heard that? Well, let's consider what Jesus said, okay? This program is called, Is That Really in the Bible? I'm asking the question, is what you've been hearing for the last 30 or 40 years, is that really in the Bible? Is it wrong for you to try to obey God? Is that considered works of the law for you to try to do the right thing, to try to obey God? I have been accused of works of the law over and over and over again, because I do some things that are different than other people, and I actually read my Bible, yes, I do, and I actually try to do what it says in the book. And because I've done that, people accuse me of, well, you're trying to get saved by works of the law. Well, let's notice what Jesus said. All right, He said this in John 14 and verse 15, He said, if you love me, keep my commandments.
Is that really in the Bible? What you think is in the Bible is not.